Welcome once again to DM Masterclass. Today, part 2 of Tabletop Adventures, the elusive role-playing game in a box. Role-playing games in a box or role-playing game inspired board games are more numerous than ever before. It started more or less with a very classic role-playing game in a box, Folklore the Affliction by Greenbrier Games. I still consider that one of the most astute role-playing game experiences that you can find in a board game, but there are many more that have since come out as well. Among them, Role Player Adventures, Aridia, Vampire the Masquerade Chapters. There are many more and many more on the horizon, among them Story of Many and Lands of Evershade, that promise a genuine role-playing game experience, but in a board game. Now, the term role-playing game is kind of a buzzword. Any game that purports to have role-playing game elements usually has one or two elements in them. Among them are things like character creation, leveling up or growing in your character, outfitting of gear, combat with dice, or using skills with numbers and some math that is involved. Even just games that have miniatures and tactical combat can pretty much tack on the term role-playing game-ish or inspired. But capturing a role-playing game in a box requires more than just being a buzzword. And in fact, the term role-playing game in a box is kind of a false comparison on three accounts. First of all, there's the comparison. Role-playing is an experience, is an imaginative exercise, a theater of the mind, if you will. A board game is a physical box with components, a toolkit of fun, so to speak. Physically, board games are boxes with components, rule books. They can have dice in them, cards, player boards, meeples, standees, miniatures. Simply by opening the board game box, it establishes the expectation that all the components need to be played with, as opposed to a role-playing game. Role-playing games are often just books, or even zines, magazines, small pamphlets. So the focus is not on the components, it's more on the content of those books, which sometimes leads to some confusion with some board gamers as to how to play a role-playing game. As role-playing games evolve, and as board games evolve, of course these many shapes differ, and sometimes they overlap. You can get a role-playing game in a box. For instance, Arkham Horror has done that recently. Many games from Free League also have role-playing game books in boxes with extra components like standees or dice, so the lines blur. But that's only physically. The experience of a board game is one of inward efficiency, going from A to B to C and ending the game in a session. The experience of a role-playing game, however, is one of infinite outward expansion. You create a character, you create a background, and from there on, you wander the world and have adventures. The world reacts to you, you react to the world. A friend of mine by the name of Brian, who runs the Adventurers Haven channel, made clear to me that it's not so much the rules that determine whether a game is closed or open, and he was actually right. It's more the mindset that a player has going into the game. If your mindset is, I'm playing a board game, then it automatically forms a closed parameter around the rules and the components inside the box. You play according to the game, and you form a strategy, you master your efficiency to get to the goals of the game, and you win from the competition, whether that is the other players or the board game itself. The mindset of a player going into a role-playing game is one that is open. You create a character, you go onto a journey that is fully autonomous. You have the authorship over your own adventures, and the impact of your character is measured on the world and the world upon your character. It is one that is less captured by the components of the game, but also the mindset is automatically established by the premise of you playing a role of your character. It is open. And now we come into the true problems of having a role-playing game in a box, or the true challenges, I should say. First of all, there are points and time in a board game that, by measuring them towards the goal, get kind of in the way of the journey itself. Second of all, there is often no character to speak of that you are playing in the game. There is no avatar of the player itself. It is often an anonymous entity or a corporation or a being or a group of forest critters that establishes your domain. The story and world is limited in scope, and in response to the player character, there can only be so much content in a board game. Thus, the experience is always going to be limited. It's always going to be hampered by the fact that the pre-written narrative runs out, or the board has actual borders. And finally, and most importantly, feeding back into the premise of the player itself, the open mindset or the closed mindset. The closed mindset player enters a board game, even if it is a role-playing game, inspired board game, with the idea that there is fixed content. And so the emergent story that flows forth is often limited to that fixed story content. Whereas in a role-playing game, the mindset is already that the emergent story is dominant in the experience. And so the emergent story also flourishes or blooms in a role-playing game environment. Yes, I dare say it. I think the role-playing game in a box is kind of dead. Why? For all the reasons aforementioned, there is no freedom of choice, not really. The illusion of choice in a role-playing game inspired board game is still always limited. The emergent expression, therefore, is stunted. Do you follow the story, or do you go off on your own adventure and have the story that you want to have? Well, the board game often leaves no choice in that matter. You follow the story, there is nothing else. Also, the interactions between the board game and the players themselves often run into mechanical issues. In order to keep the tension of the game high, and with the lack of players who inhabit the role of a game master or other players developing the story as they go, the tension resorts back to often combat, but it can be any kind of mechanic in the game. And mechanics then become the means through which the players try to achieve success, rather than the glory of having a beautiful story that is built together with other players. But if there is no points in a game, or there is no time, say for instance a cozy game like Mythwind, where's the tension? What is the point of the game? You can roleplay all you want, but there is no structural framework there to guide you or to give you that ritualistic feeling of moving components back and forth, that tactile satisfaction, for instance. Nothing is there. So what is left? Join me in part 3, where I hopefully come up with a solution called the Tabletop Adventure. I hope to see you next time, and in the meantime, keep exploring. What did I write? The mindset going into a role-playing game is one that is open.